I just flew 5,000 miles to this exact spot in Israel, because right here, almost 1,000 years ago, one of the most insane battles in history went down. Imagine this, you're 16 years old, you have a terminal illness, and you're in charge of an entire kingdom. Now imagine the most powerful military leader in the world, Saladin, is marching towards your home, with an army 10 times the size of yours. Everyone thinks you're finished. They're already planning your defeat, but you have a secret plan, a crazy, all-or-nothing gamble that could change everything. This actually happened to a kid named Baldwin IV, the Leper King of Jerusalem. Today, we are going to recreate this impossible battle. I've brought 500 people to the historical battlefield of Montgisard. We've split them into two teams. Team Baldwin, only 50 people. Team Saladin, 450 people. Team Baldwin has a massive disadvantage, but I've given them a secret advantage, a strategy so crazy it might work. The winning team splits this chest of $1 million. This is going to be the most epic historical reenactment ever. Rules. First team to capture the other's flag wins. Chapter 1. Alright, so picture this. It's the year 1177. Saladin, the era's final boss, has just united Egypt, Syria. He's an absolute legend and decides it's time to take Jerusalem. He looks at the kingdom of Jerusalem and sees a 16-year-old king, Baldwin IV, sick with leprosy. He thinks, this will be easy. He gathers a massive army, over 26,000, and marches north from Egypt. He's so confident he ignores the small details. Plan. Steamroll everything. He bypasses the main Crusader fortresses along the coast. He heads straight for Jerusalem. Cut the head off the snake. This was his first big mistake. Moving so fast, his army stretches out. His supply lines, the trucks bringing food and water, are miles long and vulnerable. He left his back door wide open while sprinting for the finish. Jerusalem panics. They see the giant army and think it's game over. Only a few thousand troops remain. Most are stuck in the south. But Baldwin, the sick 16-year-old, does the unexpected. Instead of hiding, he gathers every soldier he can find, a few hundred knights, a couple thousand-foot soldiers, and goes on the offense. It's like a tiny YouTuber challenging PewDiePie. Baldwin knows he can't win a straight-up fight, so he doesn't try to. He sees Saladin's big error, split forces raiding towns, leaving himself exposed. Baldwin realizes this is his one chance. Chapter 2. Okay, so a tiny army attacking a giant one on an open field is basically suicide. Baldwin knew this. He wasn't just brave, he was incredibly smart. He couldn't pick the fight, but he could pick the place. And the location he chose was everything. He led his forces to a place called Montgisard, near the city of Ramla. Now, this area wasn't just some random patch of dirt, it was the perfect natural trap, and Baldwin was about to use it like a pro gamer, using the map to their advantage. He was about to turn the terrain into his most powerful weapon. The battlefield at Montgisard is defined by its narrow plains, rolling hills, and uneven ground. It's not a big, flat parking lot where a massive army can spread out and use its numbers. It's choppy, it's awkward, and it's perfect for an ambush. Saladin's army was built on its cavalry, these huge formations of horsemen that could sweep across the battlefield. But in the tight, hilly terrain of Montgisard, those formations were useless. It's like trying to drive a monster truck through a narrow alleyway. You just can't deploy properly. Baldwin used this to his absolute advantage. He positioned his small army on a rise, giving them the high ground. From here, he could see Saladin's army approaching, struggling to get into formation on the broken ground below. Saladin's forces were stuck in a long, messy column, trudging through a valley. They were tired from their long march, thirsty, and completely disorganized. Baldwin forced them to fight on his terms, in a place where their biggest strength, their overwhelming numbers, became their biggest weakness. The narrow plain below them acted as a funnel, a choke point. Any part of Saladin's army that wanted to attack would have to come through this funnel. where Baldwin's knights could hit them with concentrated force. Think of it like this: if you have 450 people trying to get through a single doorway to attack 50 people waiting on the other side, the numbers don't matter as much, do they? Only a few can fight at a time. That's exactly what Baldwin did. He used the hills and the narrow plain to create a natural bottleneck. He neutralized Saladin's numerical superiority before the first sword was even swung. He was playing four-dimensional chess while Saladin was still setting up the checkers board, all thanks to his brilliant use of the terrain. Chapter 3. The moment of truth has arrived. Saladin's army is a mess, strung out and vulnerable in the valley below. Baldwin's tiny force is poised on the hill, ready to strike. But this isn't going to be a slow, grinding fight. Baldwin has one more ace up his sleeve: the Knights Templar. These guys were the special forces of the medieval world, the most elite, the most feared, the most disciplined. They were about to lead one of the most legendary charges in all of military history. With the sun at their backs, blinding the enemy, Baldwin gave the signal. The charge began. At the very tip of the spear were about 80 Knights Templar, led by their master, Odo of Saint Amand. These guys were fanatics, completely dedicated, fearless. They spurred their war horses and thundered down the slope like an avalanche of steel and fury. They weren't just attacking, they were aiming to shatter the enemy's will to fight in one single devastating blow. Imagine the sound of hundreds of armored knights on massive horses crashing into an unprepared line of soldiers. It was terrifying. This was a classic shock attack, designed to cause maximum chaos and panic. The Templars smashed directly into the center of Saladin's army, specifically targeting his personal bodyguard of Mamluk slave soldiers. These were Saladin's best troops, but they were caught completely off guard. The sheer force of the charge was unstoppable. The Templars, followed by the rest of Baldwin's knights, punched a hole straight through the enemy line, collapsing it from the inside out. The infantry on Saladin's side, who were still marching and not ready for a fight, saw this and just broke. The psychological impact was even greater than the physical one. Chapter 4. Now, let's talk about the most unbelievable part of this entire story: Baldwin IV. He's only 16 years old. He has leprosy, a disease that at the time was seen as a curse from God. It was disfiguring, painful, slowly crippling him. Most people in his condition would be hidden away, but not Baldwin. When the charge began, he wasn't watching from a safe distance. He was right there, at the front, with his men. This single act of courage was more powerful than any weapon. Because of his leprosy, Baldwin couldn't wield a sword effectively. His hands were bandaged and weak, but he insisted on riding into battle. He had the true cross, the most sacred relic in Christianity, carried before him. He got off his horse, he knelt in the dirt, he prayed in front of his entire army. He got back on his horse, he rode with them into the thick of the fight. Can you imagine what that did for his soldiers' morale? Seeing their sick young king choosing to fight and die alongside them? It was electrifying. This transformed the battle from a simple fight for survival into a holy crusade. They saw their king, suffering but defiant. They saw the true cross. They believed God was on their side. Baldwin's presence wasn't just symbolic, it was a force multiplier. Leadership, power. It turned ordinary soldiers into heroes. They weren't just fighting for a kingdom anymore. They were fighting for their king. They were fighting for their faith. His leadership inspired them to fight with a ferocity that no army, no matter how large, could withstand. This act of leadership is what separates good commanders from legendary ones. Baldwin understood that in a desperate situation, inspiration is everything. His personal bravery gave his men the courage to attempt the impossible. They saw his resolve, and it became their own. When they charged down that hill, they weren't just a small army. They were a force of nature, fueled by the incredible example of their young king. He was the living embodiment of their cause, Saladin's army, on the other hand, was fighting for conquest and loot. Baldwin's army was fighting with the conviction that they were part of a miracle. And in a way, they were. Baldwin's leadership and the powerful symbolism he wielded turned a desperate gamble into a divinely inspired victory. He proved that the strength of a leader isn't measured in physical power, but in the ability to inspire others to greatness, even in the face of certain death. That's true leadership. Chapter 5. So how did this happen? How did a military genius like Saladin get so completely outplayed? It all comes down to one critical failure: a massive strategic misjudgment fueled by arrogance. Saladin fundamentally underestimated his opponent. He saw a boy king with a tiny kingdom and assumed it would be an easy victory. This overconfidence was the seed of his defeat. He rushed his campaign, and rushing without proper planning is a recipe for disaster. His first major error was poor reconnaissance. Saladin's scouts failed to detect Baldwin's small army marching to intercept him. He was essentially flying blind. He believed the main Crusader force was bottled up far to the south and that Jerusalem was defenseless. He had no idea Baldwin was free and actively hunting him. He was focused on the prize, Jerusalem, and ignored the immediate threat in front of him. Secondly, his logistics were a nightmare. Pushing his army hard from Egypt strained his supply lines. His soldiers were exhausted, hungry, thirsty long before they even saw the enemy. An army that can't be fed can't fight. He let forces spread out to raid villages for food and water, breaking cohesion and leaving the main column vulnerable. That gap was perfect for Baldwin to exploit. When the Crusader charge hit, Saladin's army wasn't unified. It was a scattered and tired collection of units. There was no organized defense because there was no expectation of an attack. He'd planned a siege outside Jerusalem, not a surprise ambush on the march. He was caught flat-footed, army in disarray. Montgisard became a self-inflicted wound. His haste, his lack of respect for his enemy, his poor logistical planning created the conditions for Baldwin's miracle. Saladin retreated humiliated back to Egypt with Crusaders harrying him all the way. Brutal lesson: never, ever underestimate your opponent. Outro. In the end, against all odds, our team of 50 people, Team Baldwin, did the impossible. They used strategy, they used the terrain, and they charged with everything they had, shattering the larger team and capturing their flag. It was one of the most incredible things I have ever seen, and for that, they have won $1 million. Congratulations to Team Baldwin. You guys are absolute legends. This was an insane day. The Battle of Montgisard in 1177 remains one of the greatest underdog victories in history. A 16-year-old terminally ill king leading a tiny army didn't just defeat, but utterly destroyed the army of the legendary Saladin. It was a victory so shocking that it secured the Kingdom of Jerusalem for another decade, a decade it would not have had otherwise. It proves that leadership isn't about the strength of your body, but the strength of your spirit. Baldwin IV, the Leper King, will forever be remembered as the young lion who stared down a giant and won. This story is a powerful reminder that you should never give up, no matter how bad the odds look. If you have a smart plan and the courage to see it through, you can achieve anything. Thank you all so much for watching this crazy historical experiment. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next insane challenge. We have some even bigger ideas coming soon. See you in the next video. Winner, Baldwin IV, Kingdom of Jerusalem. Saladin would conquer Jerusalem later, but at Montgisard in 1177, Baldwin IV won the day. Saladin's team is confident. They're laughing. Little do they know, history is about to repeat itself. Can a tiny, outnumbered force really defeat a massive army with strategy and courage? We're about to find out. If you're new here, hit subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next. This is the story of how a 16-year-old king shocked the world. In conclusion, the winner is Baldwin IV, Kingdom of Jerusalem. Saladin conquered Jerusalem in the long run. Baldwin won the direct match during his reign as King IV. The most representative battle is the Battle of Montgisard, 1177. Winner, Baldwin IV, Kingdom of Jerusalem. 5. Reasons to win a surprise strategy. Development terrain-based defense tactics, the charge of the Knights of the Crusades. Baldwin's leadership and symbolism. Saladin's strategic misjudgment. In the end, Saladin had to flee to Syria after the defeat.